They laughed at my cheap anniversary gift, but my heartfelt gesture changed everything. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The laughter still echoes in my ears, sharp and biting. It was supposed to be a celebration, a moment of love, but instead, it turned into a spectacle of mockery. The room was filled with bright colors and warm light, but all I felt was cold, hard shame. It was our 5th anniversary, and I thought I had done something special. A small, handmade gift, a simple photo album filled with our memories. I felt proud, even as my fingers trembled with every page turn. But then, the moment I handed it to him, disbelief painted across his face. "Is this all?" he scoffed, amidst the giggles of our friends. One raised an eyebrow, while another leaned back in their chair, arms crossed, shaking their head. My heart shattered into tiny pieces. A flood of embarrassment washed over me, so intense that I struggled to breathe. I looked around at the people I thought would support me. My best friend, Clara, was the only one whose eyes weren't laughing. But even her sympathetic gaze felt like pity, and that hurt more than the laughter. The warmth of love I had hoped to ignite was extinguished. I wished I could disappear, drown in the silence that followed. The world narrowed down to the sound of my racing heartbeat and a lump in my throat. In that moment, my mind drifted back to the dark days when my fingers could barely hold a brush to paint my feelings. It was all I could afford after my mother lost her battle with cancer, leaving me to fend for myself. I had been alone, lost in the echoes of her last words, "Create beauty, even in darkness." That's why I made the album. Each picture a piece of my heart, each memory a whisper. Now, instead of warmth, I felt icy fingers curling around my chest. "What were you thinking?" I heard another friend whisper behind me. I wanted to shout, to defend my heart. But instead, I stood frozen, tears in my eyes, desperation clawing at my throat. Was it so wrong to pour my soul into something simple? As the laughter subsided, a silence fell thick, heavy. I caught him looking at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of regret. But it vanished just as fast. He turned away, moving on to the next distraction, leaving me standing there, broken. Suddenly, the door burst open, and in walked a stranger. His presence filled the room with a strange energy. Instantly, all eyes snapped to him, even the murmurs died. Who was he? Dressed in a sharp suit, he didn't fit the vibe. But there was something about him, something mysterious and captivating. "Is this a party or a funeral?" he asked, voice loud and teasing. He glanced at my half-empty hand, still clutching the album, and then at the laughter that had started to swell again amongst our friends. "Some of you need to learn about love." His words hit like a dagger. Was he really defending me? I held my breath, heart racing. Why had he come? Where did he even come from? Just as quickly as he'd arrived, he locked eyes with me, and I felt his gaze cut through the chaos, as if he could see my pain, my hurt. Questions swirled in my mind. Who is this man? What did he mean by love? And then, before I could respond, before I could even utter a single word, he smiled a smile that promised something more. A glimmer of hope surged within me, even as the laughter resumed. Would he change everything? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The warmth of that fleeting smile offered a momentary balm to my aching heart, a flicker of light amidst the shadows. I clutched the photo album tighter, feeling the weight of its memories press against my chest. In the awkward silence that followed his unexpected entrance, I could sense the confused whispers among our friends, but they felt like a distant hum. My attention was solely fixed on this stranger beacon cutting through a fog of despair. "Who are you?" I dared to whisper, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He raised an eyebrow, his confidence radiating as if he were accustomed to being the center of attention. "Just someone who appreciates real love." His gaze softened as he finally took a step toward me, the chaos of the room fading behind him. "What's your name, Emma?" I replied, and instantly, the sound of it felt as foreign as the man now standing close enough for me to see the flecks of gold in his deep brown eyes. "Emma," he repeated, as if savoring the name. "Well, I think you deserve better than laughter at your heartfelt gesture. True connection isn't found in the size of the gift but in the emotions it carries." That I wanted to cry, to let the walls I had built around my heart shatter like glass. Instead, I forced a small nod while my mind wrestled with confusion. Who was he to know anything? Finding solace in strangers felt wrong, especially when the person I had loved for years was right there, dismissively surrounded by laughter. As if sensing my turmoil, the stranger's tone shifted into something more serious. Can I see what's in there?" He nodded toward the album, his expression earnest. I hesitated, the instinct to protect my vulnerability fighting against the flicker of hope radiating from him. But as I glanced around the room at the smirks and sideways glances, the decision became clear. I could share my truth with a stranger, someone who seemed to understand, if only for a moment. That I handed him the album, watching as he flipped through the pages, taking a little longer at each photograph, pausing to observe the childlike glee on our faces, the stolen kisses, the trips that felt monumental. With each turn, I held my breath, battling the familiarity of pain that threatened to wash over me again. "This is beautiful," he finally said, his voice low with sincerity. "These memories, they're your truth. Never let anyone take that away from you." His words struck a chord deep within me. I felt understood, even as I fought the complex cocktail of emotions swirling inside, anger, sadness, but also an unexpected warmth. Just then, I caught a glimpse of him on the other side of the room, his body language devoid of the joy and fascination that once defined our love. Instead, he loomed, an unyielding shadow, dissecting my interaction with this stranger. "What's going on here?" he snapped, his tone fracturing the fragile solace I had found. The laughter of our friends dulled to a whisper, morphing into an uncomfortable silence once again. "Just talking about love," the stranger replied casually, but I felt a gravitational pull in his words that contrasted sharply with the growing tension at the table. "Emma, come here," he demanded, irritation etched into his features. Even in his anger, I felt something break, something precious that had held us together. I didn't move, rooted in place, torn between the soothing words of the man before me and the staggering fall from grace with the one I wanted to love. My heart hammered as I allowed the weight of this moment to settle, a painful reminder of how love can twist into something dark, yet oddly illuminating. "Stay," the stranger said softly, his hand reaching out toward me. "Emma." He barked again, sharper this time. That I was frozen, trapped within a whirlwind of emotions that threatened to sweep me off my feet. And in that split second, as I stood teetering on the precipice of two vastly different worlds, a powerful realization surged within me. It was no longer just about the laughter that rang in my ears, but about the echoes of love I yearned to reclaim or redefine. Yet just as I prepared to invite the stranger's warmth into my world, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, one message flashing on the screen: "We need to talk now." The text was from Clara, and her urgency struck fear deeper than any laughter ever could. Panic gripped me, overshadowing the fragile hope I had clung to. I looked between the two men, the past and the unknown. Where would I run next? What would be revealed in the shadows beneath the laughter? My heart raced, thundering in my chest as I stood alone, caught in a maelstrom of emotions, the haunting echo of my past threatening to engulf me once more. The party continued to swirl around me, laughter and chatter merging into a cacophony that felt both familiar and foreign. I stood there, paralyzed, with Clara's message burning a hole in my pocket. I could almost hear the distinct cadence of her voice pressing against my mind, urging me to unravel the knots that had bound us both these past few months. The stranger, this warm, enigmatic presence, was still beside me, waiting. His hand hovered just shy of touching mine, as if tethered to the very air we occupied. I tore my gaze away from the chaos surrounding us, seeking comfort in the golden flecks of his eyes. But those flickering lights couldn't hold all the weight of my despair. "Emma," he said softly, pulling me from my thoughts, "you have every right to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to be afraid. Sometimes, facing love means confronting the shadows we are too scared to see." His words were a whisper of hope amidst the storm, but panic clawed at my throat as I thought of Clara. I wanted to know what she needed to tell me, but the idea of her revealing something I wasn't prepared for wrapped around my insides like a serpent. I could feel myself slipping, the jagged edges of my heartbreak merging with this newfound connection. With a deep breath, I turned back to the stranger, who was now studying my face with an intensity that both soothed and unsettled me. I have to go," I stammered, desperate to escape the revelation that felt imminent. "Emma, please. What's really going on? I can help." His voice, steady and genuine, was a lifeline I couldn't decide to cling to or release, but the truth I was battling against echoed louder than any voice could calm. I couldn't abandon my world-me ties to Clara, to the life I had built around laughter and love, even if the laughter was now laced with bitterness that I should answer her, I managed to say, allowing my voice to tremble as I backed away. "I really need to go." "Then let's go together," he offered, his gaze unwavering, grounding me in the moment. "You're not alone, Emma. You don't have to make this decision by yourself." Something flickered in my chest. This gentle warmth was intoxicating, but fear sang on the edges. I barely knew him. Who was he to presume he could join me on this monumental journey? And yet, there was something comforting about the idea of sharing this burden. I felt the weight of the love I had shared for years threatening to crush me with its finality, but then, I saw him again, my partner, standing stoically at the other side of the room. He wore an expression that cut through the din of the party, narrowing his eyes in a mix of frustration and confusion that made my heart twist. In that moment, despite everything, I could still see the man I had once believed would be my forever. "Emma." He called out sharply again, and the room fell silent for a heartbeat. "You're really going to listen to that guy? You think he cares about you?" Those words pierced through the fragile sanctuary I had built in my heart with the stranger. The sting of his dismissiveness washed over me, igniting an anger I hadn't expected, an ember of revolt against the norm for once. A flicker of defiance ignited within me. "He cares more than you show me," I said, my voice trembling with conviction as the words slipped free and echoed in the hush of the room. "I deserve someone who respects the love I've given." My partner's face contorted in disbelief, and as I watched, the warmth from the stranger tightened like a rope, connecting us. Division formed in predictable sectors. Their reaction met with shocked stares from our friends, who had once laughed so carelessly at my sacrifice. "Emma, we can talk this out. Just come here," he pleaded, the mask of anger slipping slightly as desperation crept into his voice. I tore my gaze away, anxiously scanning the room, my breath hitching in my throat. The laughter that had filled the air seemed to slip away, replaced by a palpable tension. I needed to answer Clara, but there was something else, something I hadn't considered before: the implications of choosing between the love that had once felt eternal and the prospect of uncharted, genuine connection. And just like that, the ground shifted beneath my feet, creating a crack that would ultimately reshape everything I knew. Before I could turn back to the stranger or the growing chaos, my phone buzzed again. Another message, more frantic this time, lit up the screen. "Emma, it's urgent. Please, don't ignore me." A shiver darted down my spine, the weight of my choices crushing down. My heart raced as I stood poised on the brink of revelation, love teetering dangerously on the edge of heartbreak, or stepping into the unknown. The air thickened with clashing emotions, shadows closing in on me, and where once I thought I could see the way forward, now I was lost in a maze of choices. Could the stranger really change everything? Or would confronting the truth with Clara deepen my wounds beyond repair? There was no going back now. I stood facing the very choices that revolved around the core of my love, hurt, and fear, an uncertain future flickering just out of reach, a heartbeat away from changing everything. The room spun with uncertainty, the music now a discordant backdrop to my internal struggle. My emotions were tangled like the strings of a broken heart, and each thump of my pulse felt like a reminder of all the decisions I'd delayed for too long. As I hesitated, the stranger, the warmth I had felt so intensely, shifted closer, his presence a quiet buoy in an overwhelming sea. "Emma," he said, his voice low but insistent, "your heart knows what it wants. You just have to listen." There was a gentleness to his words that infused hope into my bones, and for the first time, I found myself considering the possibility that I might choose me, but as I brought my fingers to the screen of my phone, the persistent buzzing jolted me back to reality. Clara's message was a lifeline that I couldn't afford to ignore, a bridge I had crossed many times but now felt burned underneath me. My heart pounded raggedly, each beat echoing a reckoning that was long overdue. I pressed my thumb against the screen and inhaled deeply, discovering in that moment that every breath was tinged with fear and anticipation. I started, swallowing thickly, but I was interrupted by another jab of my partner's voice slicing through the quiet. "Emma, please. We can work it out. Don't throw everything away for a moment's thrill." His words cut me, not as a weapon but as a reminder of all I had built. A family, a promise, years of shared laughter and quiet vulnerabilities. Yet beneath that pain was an unspeakable truth that I could no longer hide from. I looked back at the stranger, his eyes shining with unguarded sincerity, reassuring me that my feelings were valid, perhaps even worthy of joy. "Humor me," I responded, my voice unexpectedly steady. "What if it's not a moment's thrill? What if it's something real, real?" My partner's laugh was hollow, rippling through my insides like a gust of cold wind. "Emma, we've built a life. What do you even know about him?" A surge of anger coursed through me, a brushfire of emotion that scorched away the fog of uncertainty. "And you think that because I've known you for so long, it justifies dismissing my own happiness? I have to find out what's true." Beside me, the stranger's hand inched closer, and I felt a tingle of electricity wrap around my wrist, grounding me in this emotional storm. But the fear still loomed like a specter, reminding me of Clara and what she held in her heart. The longing for her love and her understanding tugged at my core, threatening to unravel this fragile moment of clarity. "Emma." Clara's voice echoed through the recesses of my mind, less a call and more a plea that begged to be heard. Finally, I tore my gaze away from the stranger and looked right into the eyes of the man I had shared my life with. "I need to answer her," I announced, driven by a sudden, fierce need to confront the truth that I had buried deep down. As I turned back, my hand trembling over the screen, my partner reached for me again, anguish pooling in his eyes. "You're about to destroy everything, Emma. Are you really willing to risk losing Mayus?" "Maybe," I uttered softly. "But maybe I'm more afraid of losing myself." In that moment, the chaos of the party seemed to vanish, the chatter dwindling to silence as if the world conspired to hear my truth. I glanced toward the stranger, who stood quietly, waiting for my decision without judgment. With a resolute breath, I pressed my thumb against Clara's message, and the words illuminated my screen. "I'm sick, Emma. The doctors think it's serious. Please, I need you." A wave of icy fear washed over me, mingling with the pain that had already begun to surface. The enormity of her words shattered everything I thought I knew. The stakes had just surged to dizzying heights, and I suddenly found myself acutely aware of how fragile life was, how true love could both heal and destroy. Rife with newfound terror and determination, I looked back at my partner and the stranger. I didn't know how each path would unfold or who would stand beside me in the aftermath, but this was about far more than a choice between two loves. This was about a sacred bond forged through unspoken truths and the possibility of loss I'd never anticipated. "Emma," my partner ventured again, but it was no longer anger I saw, it was fear, and despair hung raw in his voice. "That I am coming, Clara," I whispered, feeling the pull of her urgency settle in my chest. I suddenly felt a surge of sympathy for my partner. While I was wrapped up in my turmoil, he was losing his anchors too. With a shaking breath, I turned to the stranger, my heart beating fast. "Thank you for being here. But I have to go." As I stepped toward the exit, the world beyond promised both connection and chaos. My decision felt monumental, each step into the unknown a dance with destiny. I could sense both the grief of leaving and the thrill of possibility fluttering within me, uneasy companions in my journey, and all at once, as I opened the door, the fleeting warmth of the stranger's presence lingered beside me, a reminder of choices yet to unfold, while the shadows of my past grew heavy behind me. As darkness enveloped me, the echoes of both love and heartache chased me into the night, shattering my quiet resolve, and leaving me teetering on the edge of a heart-wrenching revelation, one that lay hidden, waiting to confront me when I least expected it. I stepped into the cool night air, the sounds of laughter and music fading into hushed whispers behind me. The world outside was painted in muted shades of blues and purples, the moon peeking through the drifting clouds with an almost palpable sense of judgment. I clutched my phone tightly, Clara's words a heavy weight in my palm, foreboding and urgent, urging me to act. As I walked, purpose surged through me. Yet beneath that purpose lay an unshakable guilt, my partner's pleas still ringing in my ears, piercing and indelible. How could I abandon someone who had been my anchor in life's stormy waters? The tether of love and history we shared had bloated into a tangled mess of unresolved feelings. I could almost hear the echo of his last words, "You're about to destroy everything," but Clara needed me. I felt it in my bones, her vulnerability, her request for my present seat was a call I couldn't ignore. Every heartbeat resonated with the duality of my choices, the path I had taken and the path I felt drawn to. I turned the corner, my feet guiding me towards Clara's apartment, the familiar route feeling alien under the weight of my decision. Thoughts of the stranger flitted across my mind, his sincerity a temporary balm for my raw emotions. I had felt seen in a way I hadn't experienced in years. Yet, contrasting that newfound connection was the depth of my bond with Clara, one laden with memories and gestures, secrets and shared dreams. As I approached her building, I noticed the flickering light of a single candle from a window on the 5th floor. It cast wavering shadows, whispering stories of warmth and comfort, promises of solidarity. An unexpected wave of nausea coursed through me. What if this was the end of all those shared dreams? I had once envisioned a future painted with notes and laughter, quiet dinners, love letters tucked between pages of her favorite novels. Now, the possibility of losing Clara felt all too real. I arrived at her door, hesitating for a breath before knocking. The soft echo reverberated in the silence of the hallway, and I suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to flee. But as I stood there, looking at the battered, faded wood, the flickering light beckoned like a safety net, urging me to steady my breath and confront the turmoil inside. "Emma?" Clara's voice broke through the stillness, gravelly and hoarse, soaked with exhaustion. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, my heart thundering in my chest. She sat curled on the couch, a blanket wrapped tightly around her, but the sight of her was both a balm and a dagger. Her eyes, though lit with the fire of a warrior too tired to fight, glimmered softly when they met mine. "You came." "Of course I did," I replied, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. "What happened?" She gestured towards a bundle on the coffee table, her hands trembling slightly. I stepped closer, and as I did, the scent of chamomile tea rose, mingling with the hollow feeling in my stomach. The doctor's note lay open, the words swimming in a blur. "Anemia, and further testing required," filled my vision. The weight of those words hit me like a tidal wave, my breath hitching as I processed the potential implications. "Serious" was an understatement. "Clara," I began, struggling to hold back the tide of emotion. I am so sorry." "Sorry? For what? This is not your fault." She glanced at the note again, a hidden fear flickering in the curve of her lips. "I didn't want you to worry. I just thought it might be nothing." The fracture in her voice felt like glass splitting, and I reached for her hand instinctively. "Nothing? Clara, this is huge. You should have told me sooner." My heart raced, caught between the desire to comfort her and the deep-seated regret that flickered to life within me. "Tell me about your night instead," she murmured, her gaze piercing. "You look different. Who was that guy?" God, I felt my heart sink. The ambiguity of the night loomed like a dark cloud. I hadn't wanted to bring the weight of love and uncertainty to her doorstep, but the fear bubbling inside reared its head, forcing a confession out. His name is I don't even know what it means anymore. The struggle to find my words felt like attempting to navigate a dense fog. With each hesitation, her intense scrutiny only deepened. You don't need to worry about Emma, please. Her voice dripped with an urgency that caught me by surprise, arms wide open, waiting for the honesty I was holding back. Tell me how you feel. Taking a deep breath, I summoned the courage to speak. I felt a connection, the words spilled forth, raw and unfiltered. Maybe I can't let go of everything between us, but I don't want to lose what I feel either. For a fleeting moment, despair washed over her features, and I could see her heart crumbling under the strain of it all. But then, almost imperceptibly, a flicker of understanding sparked in her eyes. It wasn't anger that emerged, but a deep, quiet grief that resonated through the room. Before I could gather my thoughts, her phone vibrated on the table. Clara looked at it, a frown creasing her brow. It's the clinic, she murmured, her fingers hesitating over the screen, still unsure about the news it contained. They've scheduled another appointment. As she shifted her gaze back to me, I could see the burden of choice resting heavy in her expression, something unspoken lingering in the air. Emma, I need to know, what do you want? If I'm sick, and if this could be the end of some part of us, what do you truly want? The question hung there, heavy and potent. Time felt suspended, a bridge reaching into the unknown. I could almost taste despair at the edges of hope. In that moment, I faced the abyss of uncertainty, grappling with the weight of love and the fragility of life itself. And then, without warning, the door swung open behind us, breaking the potent moment and shattering my thoughts with the clattering chaos of footsteps. A figure stepped through, a familiar silhouette, bathed in the ambience of streetlights. My heart lurched, emotions spilling out as Clara's gaze flicked to the new arrival, her expression shifting from disbelief to alarm. Surprise. It was Clara's ex, Marcus, calling in an unexpected burst of enthusiasm that strangled the air, his demeanor oblivious to the storm that had just brewed. Emma? He exclaimed, eyebrows raising in confusion. What are you doing here? The moment stretched taut between us, revelations and choices colliding in a cacophony of tension, leaving the heavy scent of unspoken words and broken promises hanging in the air. I felt the ground beneath me shift, the weight of my truths suspended in the limelight of revelations yet to come, and as I searched Clara's eyes, desperately hoping for the understanding I craved, I realized I was standing at yet another crossroads, one that would define the shape of my future. I would need to choose my words carefully, the path toward healing intertwining with the chaos of this moment. What came next would change everything, irrevocably shattering the tentative balance I had just begun to find. The room felt small, the air thick with unsaid emotions as I glanced between Clara and Marcus, both expressions revealing their inner turmoil. Clara's initial surprise quickly evaporated into a mask of tension, her eyes narrowing, and I could almost see the gears of her mind grinding together, spinning stories of betrayal where I had felt only confusion. Marcus? She finally managed, her voice a whisper of disbelief. What are you doing here? The blanket slipped from her shoulders, revealing the vulnerability she had tried to hide. I came to see how you were doing, he said, the eagerness in his tone clashing sharply with the heaviness of the moment. I heard about the tests. Thought you might need some support. He stepped further inside, worry etched across his sharp features. Support? That's rich coming from you, Clara shot back, her words landing like daggers. An electric tension filled the room, and my chest tightened. I wanted to scream, tell him to leave, to understand that this was a place reserved for intimacy, for solace, fraught with unsteady emotions. Clara, it's not like that, I didn't mean to show up like this. He held his hands up as if trying to disperse the weight of his intrusion. I just wanted to check on you, to make sure you weren't alone. I'm not alone, she replied icily, shooting a glance in my direction that simultaneously called for support while warning me to stay silent. I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, caught in the crossfire of ex-lovers, while the truth of my feelings dangled precariously at the edge. Who is this? Marcus turned to me, his eyes scanning my face as if attempting to decode the connection that sparked between Clara and me. Emma, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We're friends. The weight of that word felt paltry in the moment, barely covering the complexity of our shared history. Friends, huh? He smirked, but there was a bitterness in his tone that knotted my stomach. You're here so much, I thought maybe she'd moved on. Guess I was wrong. The insinuation hung in the air, thick and toxic. Clara tensed beside me, her body language screaming for me to step away and shield her from this familiar storm. Can you not? She hissed, her voice low but fierce. This isn't a good time. Why? Because you're sick. You think I care about that now? He crossed his arms, leaning against the wall defiantly. If the roles were reversed, you'd be the first to come running. Maybe that's the problem, Clara replied, her words knee-deep in resentment. You're not supposed to be the first person I think of. The air crackled with unspoken grievances. I felt a pang of rejection for the history shared between them, an ache ignited by remnants of a time before, when hope was shaped by affectionate whispers rather than sleepless nights. Can we not do this now? I interrupted, summoning my strength. You both deserve to talk, but Clara needs support, not accusation. This wasn't my fight, but I could feel myself drawn in, caught in the riptide of emotions that swirled around us. Marcus took a step closer, fixing his gaze on me, his voice suddenly laced with mockery. And what do you know about supporting her? You're just the new flavor of the month, he sneered, but his words hit me with a force I hadn't anticipated. Behind Marcus, Clara's eyes bore into me, a mix of gratitude and confusion etched on her features. I don't need saving, she uttered softly, though the tiniest tremor betrayed her. But thank you, Emma. I stared at Marcus, simultaneously feeling the urge to defend Clara but also sensing a fleeting wave of compassion wash over me. Beneath that bravado, he was just a man who had once loved her. This instinct to protect his past was perhaps born from a place of fear and loss too that I didn't come here to fight. I really just wanted to make sure you were okay, Marcus said then, his tone softening, the facade cracking. Beneath his bravado, I glimpsed a flicker of something raw concern, perhaps, or regret. Clara studied him a moment longer, the tension between them palpable, each holding on to the memories that held them entwined longer than was fair. I'm okay, she finally replied, but her voice felt like a question rather than a statement, leaving the door wide open for unspoken words. My heart sank with a renewed wave of anguish. I wanted to comfort her, to remind her of the hope that flickered even in darkness, but I also grappled with the weight of my own truths, a kaleidoscope of feelings that thrashed inside me like waves against an unforgiving shore. It's late, I said suddenly, my voice breaking into the charged silence. Maybe this should wait. Clara turned to me, her expression pleading, begging for me to stay, but the moment felt fragile. I could already see the relief transforming into tension, a frail piece that could break at any second. Emma's right, Marcus said, lowering his voice, attempting to step back into the space of concern. Maybe we should know. Clara's voice cut through the air sharply, raw and uncompromising. I don't need to revisit old wounds tonight. The truth is, I don't know where I stand or what this is anymore. She gestured between us all, and I'm too tired to fight. Then let's talk about it, Marcus suggested, a gentle firmness returning. Let's just be honest for once. Clara hesitated, her gaze drifting back to me. We shared a moment, the weight of our unconfessed emotions palpable. I felt tethered to her, yet an insidious doubt crept in. Was this the point of no return? Would I watch the pieces of my heart shatter more, or would this reveal a clarity I so desperately yearned for? As Clara opened her mouth to speak, the tension in the room became electric, as though the air itself were holding its breath. And just then, the sudden ping of her phone interrupted the moment. Once again, a message that seemed ominous and cryptic, a reminder of an even graver reality brewing. Clara, I urged quietly, my heart racing, you need to look at that. Her hand trembled as she picked up her phone, the light illuminating her face. I could see every emotion traveling across her features: fear, uncertainty, anguish before she pressed a finger against her lips, stunned into quietness as she read. What is it? I asked gently, the urgency escalating, but she remained silent, her breathing catching in her throat. Finally, her voice came out in barely a whisper, "I have to go back to the clinic now." The room chilled. I could feel the gravity of that small statement pressing down on us like a heavy shroud. Clara's eyes bore into mine, a tempest of hope and despair mixing like oil and water, as everything we had built in this moment began to unravel. I reached for her hand instinctively. "Let's go. I'm here with you," I promised, though I was unsure how far that promise would stretch. Just before we reached the door, Marcus stepped forward once more, a softness wrapped in brave resolve. "It'll come too, maybe we can make sense of this together." Clara looked at him, her expression a mix of disbelief and desperation, grounding both of our expectations into a stark reality. The tangled web of our entangled hearts pulled tighter, and I understood that there was no escaping the revelations typical of chaos nor the beautiful mess that love could be. As we stepped into the night, uncertainty wrapped around us like a shroud, the darkness whispering promises of what was to come, each heartbeat echoing against the chaos that awaited us. The moon hung high, a sentinel in the night sky, casting pale shadows across the pavement as we hurried towards the clinic's entrance. Clara's grip on my hand was tight, her pulse fluttering beneath my fingertips like a frightened bird. With each step, the enormity of the situation weighed down on us, a palpable dread mixed with the adrenaline of impending news. I could hear Marcus trailing behind, his silence a stark contrast to the anxious energy crackling between Clara and me. As we entered the stark fluorescent lighting of the clinic, the sterile scent took me back to my own memories of waiting, of uncertainty, of sleepless nights. The atmosphere felt heavy with anticipation, an undertone of unspoken fears lurking in the corners of this monochrome room. It was as though the very walls were bleeding hope and despair alike. "Do you want me to come inside?" I asked Clara hesitantly as we reached the reception area. I could feel the constriction of time pressing closely against us. She looked at me, her expression torn between gratitude and something darker, more fragile. I don't know," she admitted, squeezing my hand tighter before releasing it slowly. "It feels different this time." "Different how?" I questioned, searching her gaze for an anchor to guide me through the storm she was navigating. "Last time, I didn't have to face this alone. I had Marcus," she confessed, glancing over her shoulder, where he was leaning against the wall, arms crossed and a stony expression cast over his features. There it was, the ghost of their past, flitting like an unwelcome reminder in the air between us. But before I could respond, a nurse appeared from behind the counter, her demeanor professional yet soft, like a balm against the edges of our rising anxiety. "Clara?" she called, and I could see the way Clara's breath caught in her throat, her body going rigid. It was the call she had both anticipated and dreaded, a summons to confront her reality. "Let's go," I said, my voice firm as I stepped closer to her, silently pledging my presence as a shield against the unknown. Marcus followed as we walked towards the examination room, a silence enveloping us that felt more stifling than comforting. Inside, the room was filled with the cold air of clinical efficiency, bright lights glaring down like interrogation lamps. As Clara sat on the examination table, I leaned against the wall, trying to give her space while remaining close enough to bridge any gap she might need filled. Minutes dragged, stretching like molasses, thick with tension. I could see Clara's fingers fidgeting, twisting in her lap, a physical manifestation of the turmoil within her. The doctor entered, wearing an expression that conveyed professionalism blended with empathy. "Clara, how have you been feeling?" he asked, flipping through charts, his eyes flickering with concern. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know, the same, I think." He nodded, glancing up with a gentle yet probing gaze. "We've received your test results, and would like to discuss a possible plan moving forward." At that moment, a knot formed in my stomach. I silently pleaded for strength for her, for clarity amidst the chaos. For the hope that Clara sought but seemed to fear more than anything. After a series of questions and answers, the doctor turned serious. "Clara, I need to be frank. The results indicate that we need to explore further treatment options, including possible hospitalization for close monitoring." The words hung over the room, a dark cloud threatening to burst. Clara's breath hitched, her face going pale as she processed the information. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, encapsulating the helplessness I had feared. Visibility without the ability to alter the course set before her. I can't do this, she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes, shimmering with unspoken fears. I thought I was getting better. Marcus stepped forward, his previous bravado evaporating, replaced by an earnest vulnerability. Well, figure this out together, Clara. You're not alone. But the sentiment felt both comforting and cruel. The complexity of their shared history unfolded like a complex puzzle, each piece a jagged edge threatening to hurt those handling it. The real question lurked beneath. We were standing on the precipice of understanding, yet the past clawed at every attempt for clarity. Maybe I need time, Clara said, her voice wavering. Time to think. I can't bear this right now. The doctor nodded, his expression kind. That's understandable, but time may not be on our side. I recommend seeing a counselor too, someone who can help navigate these feelings. A flicker of frustration ignited within me. I desperately wanted to shout that we were fighting for her life, yet I felt powerless to change her mind. Instead, I turned to her, searching for a way to express my unwavering support. Clara, whatever you decide, I'm here. You have the strength to face this, I believe in you. Just then, her phone buzzed again, pulling her focus away from the reality we were living. She glanced down at the screen, her brow furrowing deeply. My heart raced as I watched her face fall. It's my mom, she said, her voice breaking. She needs to talk to me about something important. I felt the air shift again, the impending weight of news shifting like an earthquake beneath our feet. Clara, you don't have to answer right now, I urged, sensing her unease growing. But her expression hardened, determination mingling with dread. I want to know what she thinks. What if it's about my treatment? Just take a breath, I began, but I could see the conflict raging behind her eyes, the need for answers warring against the fear of new truths. Taking a moment, Clara swallowed hard before tapping on her phone, her voice trembling as she answered. Hi, Mom. I could see the change in her demeanor instantly, the fragility that had been buried beneath layers of uncertainty resurfaced with an intensity that stung. Clara's face went pale, her eyes widening as words spilled from the other end. What do you mean, you found something? Clara, I said softly, moving closer to her, bonding over the newfound chaos. Her grip on the phone tightened, knuckles blanching as she listened intently. The world outside felt irrelevant, the walls of the clinic closing in around us as if the life we had known was spiraling towards something entirely unfamiliar. Her lips parted but no sound emanated, a soundless cry amplified by the sudden fear coursing through our veins. Each second felt like an eternity until finally, she hung up, her face drained of color, a tempest of emotions radiating off her small frame. Clara? I asked, concern swallowing me whole. What did she say? And in the wavering silence, I felt a sense of dread unfurling, a truth that would redefine everything we thought we understood. I can't do this, she stammered, tears spilling like drops of shattered hope. Not now, not ever. In that moment, the gravity of the world shifted, pulling us toward a new reality intertwined with promises broken and love tested in the crucible of pain. The revelations waiting just beyond the horizon were only starting to reveal themselves, setting off a chain reaction that threatened to collapse everything into darkness. The cliffhanger of her mother's cryptic words hung between us, foreshadowing a deepening rift. With each sorrowful breath Clara took, the uncertainty became our only companion, leaving us on the brink of an emotional abyss we could not escape. Clara stood there, trembling as the reality of her mother's call washed over her like a cold wave, leaving her gasping for breath. The fluorescent lights above flickered, adding to the urgency in the air, a palpably electric tension, as if even the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next word that would fall from her lips. I can't be sick, she murmured, almost as if trying to convince herself. I can't. Before she could spiral further, Marcus stepped forward, concern etched deeply into his features, as if he was trying to bridge the chasm that had suddenly formed. Clara, whatever she said, we can handle this. We'll find a way through together. His voice was steadier than before, but the quiver in it betrayed hints of his own fear, but Clara barely registered his words, her thoughts swirling into a tempest as anxiety flared. What did she mean by found something? What's wrong with me? Her gaze darted between us, frantic and pleading for answers we didn't have. I wanted so desperately to comfort her, yet my own uncertainty loomed, a shadowy specter that threatened to choke the courage I had been mustering. Instead, I reached out, resting a steadying hand on her shoulder, hoping to anchor her amidst the tempest. Well, figure this out, Clara. Let's talk about it. What do you think she meant? I don't know. She cried, the bauble of her composure splintering with every syllable, echoing in the sterile exam room that felt like a box closing in on us. I'm so tired of everybody talking about me like I'm fragile. I'm just in a rut, I don't need more tests and treatments. We had all danced around her fragility, it was a delicate balance of care and honesty. I felt the weight of my own unspoken fears. What if this call meant what I feared it did? I remembered my instincts warning me that there was something more beneath the surface, a treacherous ground we had only begun to traverse. Clara turned away, unable to hold my gaze any longer. Her eyes were glossed over, processing fears too heavy for her to vocalize. I don't want to face this. Although her words hung in the air like a thick fog, I sensed a flicker of something deeper, a primal fight rising like a phoenix within her, yet hard to grasp amidst so much pain. You don't have to face it alone, Clara, Marcus reiterated, his expression earnest, despite the overwhelming emotions etched across his own features. Then why do I feel so alone? She cried, frustration, despair, and anger boiling over. I have what feels like a million people in my life, but everyone seems to disappear when I need them the most. My heart sank with each word, realizing how deeply rooted her fear of isolation was. The truth throbbed painfully, our connections were fraying at the edges, as if the very threads of support that bonded us were unraveling in the shadows of her illness. That in the midst of our turmoil, I longed for a glimmer of hope, a thread of light that could weave understanding into our fraught conversation. Maybe letting them support you could help, I suggested, the thought tentative but lingering in the air between us. Have you told your mom how you feel? How her calls affect you? Clara blinked, taken aback by the idea. What if it makes things worse? Or it could help, Marcus chimed in. Honesty might be the first step. She may be scared too. What if she says something that turns everything upside down? What if this is the start of something worse? Clara's voice faltered, and I watched the light in her eyes dim further with every heavy word. Then we break it together, I said, punctuating the gravity of the moment as a hint of strength seeped into my tone. No matter how challenging, how dark, you've got us. Finally, she met my gaze again, and I saw a flicker of something, perhaps a flash of relief or a whisper of gratitude trapped behind the shimmering veil of her tears. Before she could respond, a small commotion echoed from the waiting room, breaking the weight of our moment. A child's laughter, bright and innocent, cut through the atmosphere, pulling our attention momentarily from the looming storm. Clara's expression shifted, caught between longing and sorrow, a reminder of the purity of youth and the normalcy she felt slipping away. It was a moment I wished we could capture, laughter, innocence, and warmth enveloping us like a cozy blanket against the world outside, which felt so cold and daunting. I locked eyes with Clara, wishing to convey that joy was still in the corners of life, waiting for her to beckon it back when she was ready. Yet the laughter faded and the tense reality hung heavier than ever. Maybe, Clara began, her voice barely surpassing a whisper. Maybe my mom isn't all bad. Maybe if I just tell her how I feel. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, a reminder of whatever news awaited her. My heart dropped as I saw her eyes widen again, a storm brewing beneath her brow as she read the new message flashing across the screen. It's my dad, she breathed, her voice trembling again. He wants to know about my health. Clara, you don't have to answer him right away, I urged gently, aware of the sudden tension in her frame, but she didn't hear me. Her focus had shifted entirely to the swirling emotions, coiling tighter around her heart like a vice. I can't keep them in the dark. I can't bear the weight of lying to them or to yourself, I interjected softly, sensing the fragility of her predicament. But discovering the truth doesn't have to be done alone, Clara. She looked up, eyes glistening, torn between the weight of obligation and the dawning awareness of her own need for support. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was still a way forward, a potential openness, threaded through her doubts and fears, waiting for courage to shine through the cracks. As she lifted her phone, my breath halted, dread bubbling in my chest. What would happen if she reached out during this tempestuous moment? Would it fortify her resolve or unravel the last strings we held together? And as she hesitated, a third message chimed in quickly after the first, and a shadow passed over her face, a new dimension of fear, one far less anticipated but somehow more frightening. "Oh God," she whispered, "what now?" The room around us felt impossibly small as my heart raced, and we all braced for the impact of whatever truth awaited us behind the new message. The tension crackled, swelling as our shared journey seemed to weigh heavily upon us. Whatever was about to unfold would shed light on the truths we had been dancing around, clarifying the uncertainties that shrouded the love we thought could withstand anything. And yet, as her thumb hovered over the screen, the world slipped from my grasp, leaving me standing on the brink of her impending revelation, one that could change everything we thought we understood. Clara's breath hitched as she opened the new message, her knuckles turning white around her phone. Time seemed to stretch out as we waited, the silence wrapping around us like a cocoon, trapping us in an unbearable stillness. I could see the flicker of emotions tracing her face: confusion, fear, dread. Each word she read sank into her skin, weaving themselves into the fabric of her thoughts. "Clara?" I prompted, my voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to reach out, to touch her hand, to lend her my strength measured in kindness, but I feared that any gesture would cause her to retreat further into herself. She took a shaky breath, her eyes darting across the screen, absorbing the message like a sponge thirsting for information. It's from my dad," she finally choked out, her voice cracking under the tension. "He says he's found a specialist. Someone who's supposed to be the best." A glimmer of hope flickered in Marcus' eyes as he leaned forward, both of us willing her to interpret the news as a lifeline rather than another weight pressing down on her spirit. "That's good, right? Maybe this could be a step forward." "Maybe," Clara said, but her tone was laden with skepticism. "Or maybe it's just another reminder that I'm not okay. That I can't just be normal." Her later words hung in the air, thick with pain, drawing a sharp breath from me as the memories of other moments swirled back. I remembered nights spent worrying, waiting for the phone to ring, each buzz echoing like an unfulfilled promise of hope. My heart ached for her then, and it did so again now, knowing that at the center of her struggles lay a truth so deeply rooted it was turning into fear, a fear that her very identity was being consumed by this illness. "Clara," I spoke again gently, nudging her back to the surface of our reality. "You're not defined by this. You're so much more than your diagnosis." But all I received was a brittle nod, her frame still enveloped in shadows of doubt. I watched as she weighed her options in silence, her eyes glossing over, lost in contemplation. "What if I go see this specialist?" she murmured, more to herself than to us. "What if I'm forcing something that isn't there?" The flicker of hope from before dimmed once more. "You can't know until you try," I tried, feeling desperate for her to see the potential beyond her fears. "What harm can it do? You owe it to both yourself and your family to explore every avenue." Clara let out a bitter laugh that sounded more like an echo of despair than joy. "You think they want to hear me come back with another piece of bad news?" "Hi, Dad, by the way, I went to see the best specialist." But suddenly, a small boy came darting past our door, chasing after a balloon that had escaped his grasp. His infectious giggle punched through the melancholy, and Clara's eyes momentarily brightened at the reminder of innocence. Yet just as quickly, her smile faltered, she turned her gaze back to her phone, that damning light illuminating her face in sharp contrast. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered, her voice trembling. It was a confession laced with sorrow and vulnerability. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine when I know it's not." Marcus stepped in closer, his arm finding its place around her shoulders, a silent act of solidarity. "No one is asking you to be fine every day. Just being honest about where you are, that's a brave thing to do." The boys' laughter faded into the corridors, and silence engulfed us once more. It was in this insulated moment, where hope clashed against doubt, that a thought began to form in my mind. Maybe facing this together means finding a way to talk to your family. Could you really keep dodging the real conversations? At the mention of family, Clara flinched. How could I possibly share this burden with them? They've always seen me as the strong one, the one who takes care of things. What if I show them I'm weak? Strength and weakness aren't the same, Marcus replied, conviction weaving through his words. Your vulnerability could be what helps them understand how to support you. Or it could make everything worse, she bit back, but the fight in her voice edged closer to exhaustion than anger, a small sign that she was slowly cracking under the weight. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again, vibrating violently against her glassy table surface. Clara's eyes widened as she hesitated before glancing at the screen. "It's another message from my mom," she breathed, trembling anew. In that instant, with trembling hands, Clara opened the message, each moment stretching like an eternity, her breathing shallow as we hung on to her every reaction. A chance for solace? A catalyst for further pain? "Oh no," Clara gasped, lowering her gaze as if she'd been punched in the gut. I could see her stiffen, her expression shifting to disbelief. She's saying my dad. What is it, Clara?" I pressed, my heart racing for her. With shaking fingers, she read aloud, allowing the words to linger between us like a heavy fog. "She says they might need to talk about a family intervention." A chill rushed through the room, pressing against us with icy fingers as the reality sunk in. Clara's face morphed in an alarming mix of disbelief and panic, the depth of her fear palpable in the charged space between us. "Oh God, no. They can't do that." The notion of an intervention seemed to loom larger than the fear. It felt like a nosedive into an abyss from which there was no clear return. My heart ached at the thought of how difficult this conversation would become, not just for her, but for all of us entwined in the turmoil. "Clara, take a breath," I urged, feeling the weight of all our emotions crashing down. "This is bad, but we'll figure it out together." "Together?" She spat back, eyes flashing with a tempest of anguish and defiance. "You can't just sweep this under the rug, this isn't some small problem anymore. What if this changes everything? What if I don't want to face it?" As that question hung in the air, its weight pooling between us, everything I longed for, the strength I wanted to give her, felt utterly insufficient. The landscape of our reality warped, darkening with threats and raw feelings. And as Clara looked away, her gaze distant and shrouded in anxiety, one thought anchored itself within me: something was unraveling, but it was only the beginning, the fringes of a much larger storm beginning to stir. I stood there, suffocated by Clara's fear and my own tangled emotions. The walls of the clinic suddenly felt like an enclosure rather than a refuge, each sterile corner echoing our despair. The message from her mother hung like a dark cloud, woven into the very air we breathed. I couldn't lose Clara to this. "Not like this, Clara," I ventured, my voice trembling but resolute. "You don't have to face this alone. An intervention, as frightening as it seems, could actually serve as the lifeline you didn't know you needed." Her eyes darted towards mine, flickering with uncertainty. In that moment, I witnessed the internal battle she fought, wariness clashing against the flickering spark of hope begging to take root. You don't understand," she whispered, breathless. "They see me as the strong one. I can't be weak. I can't show them I'm scared." "Sweetheart," I said, stepping closer, "being vulnerable is not a sign of weakness. It's an act of courage. This illness is trying to define you, but you're still here, alive, fighting. Let them support you. Let them see you." Silence enveloped us, thick and heavy, broken only by the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears, unsure of whether she wanted to embrace the consolation or recoil from it. I reached out, gently brushing her hair behind her ear in an act of tenderness that felt more like an anchor than I had anticipated. Then came the soft voice of Marcus, breaking through the tight silence once more. "Clara, I get it. I do. It's terrifying to think about being seen for who you really are, the pain, the fear." He took a step closer, his empathy spilling into the room. "But neither of us can walk this path for you. It's yours to navigate, but we can hold the lamp while you find your way." It was a simple yet profound sentiment that echoed through me, intertwining with my own hopes and fears. Clara's gaze shifted from Marcus to me, a tempest of emotions swirling around as her breath caught in her throat. In the spaces between her breaths, I saw something begin to shift, a glimmer of acceptance. "That I don't want to lose what's left of me," she said, her voice a fragile whisper that hung in the air, tear-stained and full of despair. "What if exposing myself ruins everything?" "Sometimes," I said slowly, "you have to break it all down to rebuild. The rose blooms from the dirt, Clara, despite the obstacles in its way." I could see her wrestling with my words, weighing them against the specters of fear clinging to her: doubt, uncertainty, pain. A single tear broke free from the corner of her eye, sliding down her cheek like a testament to the weight she carried. "Then what if I fail? What if you don't?" I countered gently, so softly that it almost felt like an invitation to hope. "What if this is how you finally free yourself from the shackles of worry? No one expects you to have all the answers. All any of us ask is to be by your side." As our eyes locked, the air shifted, and in that moment, I was struck by the profound realization of how love often emerges through vulnerability. The fear she felt, the loneliness, the weight of expectation were, in fact, roads leading back to the very foundation of what connected us all. "Clara," Marcus said suddenly, shifting the mood in the room once more, "you don't have to shoulder this burden without anyone else. Together, we can face your family. You don't have to do it alone." Clara stared at Marcus, her eyes wide with the enormity of his words. There was something in his voice, calm yet steadfast, that seemed to bolster her courage, weaving a thread of solidarity between us three. Taking a deep breath, Clara squared her shoulders, and within a heartbeat, the metamorphosis began. "Okay," she said, her voice quivering but determined. "Let's do it. I'll call my parents." In that moment of realization, a look crossed her face, something deeper than fear, infused with acceptance. Just then, her phone buzzed again. "What now?" she whispered, looking down as her expression morphed rapidly from fear to something like shock. As she read, the color drained from her face. It's Mom," she choked, her eyes brimming with terror. "She says she's already on her way here." A whirlwind of anxiety whirled through the room, filling every inch with uncertainty. Clara's hand trembled, her once steady resolve beginning to shatter again. The pending conversation was heady, filled with the ghost of dread swirling in each unspoken word. "Clara," I said urgently, stepping forward as walls began to shift around us. "This could be your chance right here, right now, to reclaim your voice." "I can't. I'm not ready," she murmured, shaking her head, and yet it was that very fragility I wanted to grant a voice to. And then, in an act of instinct, I took her hands and turned them palm upward, encouraging her to find strength where she thought none remained. "You fought harder battles, Clara. This is about leaning into love and confronting it, together." As if ignited by the fiery embers of her courage, Clara looked towards Marcus. Clarity flashed before her eyes, and then she glanced back at me. There was acceptance brewing, a willingness to shatter the confinement of shadows holding her hostage. Just then, the faint sound of footsteps echoed through the corridor, and the moment collided with trepidation. Clara squeezed my hands tightly. "Okay, this is it, I can't hide anymore." I turned toward the entrance, where Clara's parents were about to step into her life, a dawning storm of emotion waiting just beyond the threshold. But in that moment, as Clara stepped forward with me and Marcus by her side, a sense of electrifying courage enveloped her. As her mother appeared, wide-eyed and brimming with concern, Clara stood tall, her heart pounding yet vibrant in her chest. Here was the chance for unflinching honesty. Wait, I said, looking at Clara as her lips quivered with the weight of unsaid words. Taking a deep breath, she finally uttered the words that had eluded her for so long. Mom, there's something I need to tell you. And as Clara dove into the depths of her truth, sunlight began to seep through the cracks of despair, illuminating a pathway beckoning us all toward love and healing. By the time the evening waned, once covered by the shadows of doubt, there was a newfound vulnerability flowing between Clara and her parents, wrapping around us like a soft blanket embracing the dark. In that moment, I felt transformed, like the very earth beneath my feet was shifting just enough to carry the weight of possibility. Together, Marcus whispered to me as we watched the familial exchange, "We've all just taken the first steps towards something beautiful." Yeah, I breathed back, drawing a deep breath as the warm glow of a moonlit sky etched itself across our hearts. It's okay to be afraid, but sometimes, the most beautiful connection comes from the depths of uncertainty. And just like that, hope began to dance through the cracks once again, leading us into the next chapter of our lives where love flourished, even amidst the pain. As the door closed softly, sealing away whispers of yesterday while welcoming what was to come, I knew we had all stepped onto a horizon redefined by heart, guided by love, ready to face tomorrow, together. Sometimes, I whispered to Clara, love is simply the act of daring to be seen. And in that moment, as the first hints of dawn crept into view, I knew we were all brave enough to stand in our truths, united as we walked towards the light, embodying the love that made the journey our journey worth every heartbeat.